Good morning, everyone. My name is Jonathan Goldman, and I am chairman of the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition, the PJC, a statewide coalition which represents the voices of the Jewish community throughout this Commonwealth through advocacy, education, and coalition building. I would like to welcome everyone to this 40th annual Civic Commemoration of the Holocaust, and thank you for being here. Each year, the Governor's Office and the PJC co-sponsor this event. We are pleased that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania is continuing this tradition of commemorating the victims, the survivors, and the lessons of the Holocaust. We are likewise grateful for the legislature's unwavering support of this program, their continual support of Holocaust education in Pennsylvania, and their overwhelming support of nonprofit security grants that protect synagogues, mosques, and churches throughout our Commonwealth, supporting all Pennsylvanians who wish to worship in peace, free from fear, hate, and violence, especially in these tumultuous times. Part of our collective charge for today is to consider what citizens of the Commonwealth should learn from the atrocities of the Holocaust, and to question whether and how we are sharing these important lessons with the next generation of Pennsylvanians. As we continue to teach our students and ourselves about the horrors of the Holocaust, we recognize that we must educate all society. If we do not share this horrific but vital history of the Holocaust, society may not know when to speak up. In recent years here in Pennsylvania, the implementation of Act 70 of 2014 has assured that Commonwealth students learn about the Holocaust, genocide, and human rights violations in our world history. To date, over 95% of Pennsylvania public, charter, and technical schools take advantage of a comprehensive curriculum and resources to accurately teach their students about what happened and what we can learn from the history, so such tragedies never happen again. History has taught us that good people can become complicit in unspeakable atrocities through their collective silence. To prevent the past from repeating itself, we must speak out. We must reject the wholesale degradation of any group of people by our leaders. If we do not, to paraphrase the words of German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller, which are reprinted in your programs, when they come for you, there will be no one left to speak out. We must understand our world history, remember the atrocities of the past, and be vigilant to make sure they never happen again. In honoring the survivors of the Holocaust, we honor the children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren of survivors who are here with us today. With great humility and respect, we acknowledge their important contribution to today's program. The events and experiences the survivors endured, their will to recover, and to continue to live, and the actions of the righteous who help them to survive and thrive are a living testimonial to the strength, goodness, and faith of the human spirit. As the years continue to bring distance between the atrocities of the Holocaust and the present day, the need to teach our neighbors, communities, and especially our children about the horrific actions of the Nazis only becomes more acute, as does our moral obligation to fight our own prejudices, learn about people different from ourselves, and stand up against hate and to protect tolerance and promote tolerance. Without our diligence, the passage of time may begin to cloud our collective understanding of how the Holocaust came to be. We must work against this pool of time so we never forget what happened and do our utmost to ensure it will never happen again. I would now like to introduce Rabbi Howard Finkelstein of Kesher Israel Synagogue in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where he has served as rabbi since January of 2023. Rabbi Finkelstein is a graduate of Yeshiva University and New York University, where he received an MS, MA, and rabbinic ordination. It's my honor to call on him to offer his perspective. Thank you, Rabbi.
Good morning, everybody. There's no doubt that this year especially, there is a need, there is a concern to remember what happened during the Holocaust, especially as we see today, for example, Jewish students at university campuses across North America, unfortunately, who are experiencing feelings of isolation, feelings of abandonment. This morning, an article appeared regarding the 1930s about physicians in Germany who decided, despite their oath of responsibility to their patients, that they would discriminate against Jewish doctors in Germany in the 1930s. Academics, professionals, etc., had no compunction at all in terms of distancing themselves, exercising acts of bigotry against the Jewish community in Germany at that particular time. And unfortunately, today, Jewish students are experiencing something very similar on their campuses, where they are afraid to walk across the campus, afraid to attend classes, afraid to be assaulted. This is a repeat or a review, if you will, of what happened so many years ago. And therefore, we have responsibility to say, never again, is not simply a slogan or a catchword. It's an actuality that we must put into practice and experience to ensure that our future generation will not suffer, God forbid, a Holocaust in the future, but to the contrary, will be able to live peaceful and successful lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Finkelstein. It is my honor now to introduce Representative Dan Frankel. Representative Frankel currently serves the 23rd Legislative District, which includes Allegheny County, and is currently the Democratic chairman of the House Health Committee. He is a former chair of the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition and remains an integral partner in advancing our mission as an organization. He is a co-chair of the newly formed Pennsylvania Jewish Caucus. Representative Frankel has a bachelor's degree from Kenyon College and completed a program for senior executives in state and local government at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government. Thank you, Representative Frankel.
Thank you, Jonathan, and good morning, everybody. The word genocide was coined in 1944 by Polish-Jewish lawyer Raphael Lemkin. What Lemkin and the world had witnessed over the prior 3 years was the systematic extermination of Jews across nearly 24 countries. It literally had no name before then. In Czechoslovakia, 260,000 Jews were rooted out and murdered. In Hungary, nearly 300,000 killed. In Poland, nearly 3 million were hunted and slaughtered. Jews and anyone who tried to help them were taken out of their homes and the communities where they lived solely because of their ethnic and religious heritage. They are often tortured, and they were murdered. By 1945, most European Jews, 2 out of every 3, were dead. That is genocide. That was the Holocaust. When I was a child, Holocaust survivors made their experiences tangible for the rest of us. Their stories included names of playmates they never saw again, and the head-spinning contrast of before and after, the thousands of impossible choices and the physical scars of suffering. Some grandparents had numbers tattooed on their forearms. Whether they were driving to the doctor or getting you to an after-school snack, there was a physical reminder of the suffering they once endured. Many had crushing survivor's guilt and other lifelong mental health struggles. Some talked about it, and others never did. But the survivors' very existence made it very real. 6 million Jews murdered, yes, but also a sister, a father, a school teacher. Gas chambers and death camps and pogroms, yes. But the survivors would tell you it didn't start that way. The Holocaust started with scapegoating Jews for the world's ills, promoting tropes, and the casual use of dehumanizing language. I tell you this today with a rising sense of panic, because all those precursors to violence are sharply rising today. We see it in the statistics, and we see it on the streets of my Jewish neighborhood in Squirrel Hill, where a group of teens speaking Hebrew in a coffee shop were confronted about the war in Gaza, where a Jewish family came home to find a Nazi slogan spray-painted on their property, where windows have been smashed, fake blood has been smeared, and tires have been punctured at Jewish homes and businesses. On college campuses across the country, Jewish young people are reporting daily cruelties, harassment, and isolation. How do you study for exams when you can hear from your dorm room chants of globalize the Intifada, the name of the modern campaign of suicide bombings against Israeli citizens? In recent months, Jewish students have described an environment of hostility on too many campuses. A mezuzah torn from a dorm doorway, a no Zionist sign at a party, chants of go back to Poland, and final solution flags at campus protests. These are not protests against governments or decision makers. They are against neighbors and classmates, and it's happening in 2024. Most survivors of the Holocaust have passed away. If they were here, they would tell us about the windows smashed 85 years ago. They would tell you about the escalating cruelties suffered by children walking through their business districts in the 1930s. And they would warn that those who oppose diversity and tolerance will take any opportunity to spread hatred. We observe Yom HaShoah every year for exactly this reason. Because the Holocaust did not start with violence. It ended with violence. It started with dehumanization. That is what we must never forget. Thank you. It is now my great honor and my privilege to introduce our next guest, Governor Josh Shapiro. Governor Shapiro was recently inaugurated as the 48th governor of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania on January 17th, 2023. Governor Shapiro is from Montgomery County and attended the University of Rochester and earned his Juris Doctorate degree from Georgetown University. He served in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from 2005 to 2012. I had the great privilege of being able to be there to watch the beginnings of his meteoric rise through Pennsylvania. He was only 30 years old back then. And then he was Montgomery County Commissioner from 2012 to 2017 before serving as Pennsylvania Attorney General from 2017 to 2023 before taking the oath of office as Pennsylvania's governor. His administration and state elected officials must be commended for their leadership in fighting actions of hate, violence, and genocide, assuring that we never forget the atrocities of the Holocaust. I also want to note that Governor Shapiro has always talked openly about his Jewish faith and upbringing and how it has informed his governing style and his priorities, while always uplifting and validating everyone else's expression of their faith. With that, let me introduce my friend, our governor, Josh Shapiro.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Frankel, and good morning to everyone here. Representative Frankel, I want to begin by thanking you not only for that kind introduction, but most importantly, for your lifetime of meaningful work on behalf of your constituents, the Jewish community, and making sure that Holocaust awareness and remembrance is something that is part of the fabric of this Commonwealth. I'm grateful to you for your friendship and for your leadership. I'm especially grateful to be joined today by so many leaders in the legislature, beginning with Madam Speaker McClinton, who is here, joined by members of the House of Representatives. I'm grateful that so many of you are here today. I want to especially acknowledge those who join us up front, and that is Representative Schlossberg and Representative Gillen. Thank you for your work in the House of Representatives, along with Leader Matt Bradford. I'd also like to thank leaders of the state Senate who are here, who you will hear from representing their colleagues, Senator Kristin Phillips-Hill and Senator Judy Schwank. It matters that they are here. It matters that Attorney General Michelle Henry is with us. Treasurer Stacey Garrity is with us, as well as members of their staff who I see in the audience. It matters that the Secretary of Budget, Ori Monson, has joined us today, together with our General Counsel, Jen Selber. But notwithstanding how important all of these people are, I know that they would join me in recognizing that the most important people who join us here today are the survivors and the family of the survivors, those who have joined us here today to make sure that the story is told. I want to say that I'm truly honored by your presence. We are all honored by your presence. We are thankful today that clergy has joined us, that the rabbis in this community have chosen to spend their valuable time with us. Thank you for joining us. The act of all of you being here today, especially these family members, to share your stories and those of your families and friends, demonstrates great courage and brings real meaning to this conversation and ensures that we will never, ever forget. Those stories that you share, it has immense power to not only remind us of what we've lost, but to call us all into action for a better future and a better, more just world. Now, perhaps more than ever before, we need to lift up your voices. We need to lift up those stories, and we need to learn from all of you. Every year, when we gather on Yom HaShoah to mourn and to remember the more than 6 million Jews who were murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust, we remember that they were first persecuted, they were then imprisoned, and then they were murdered solely because of who they were and how they worshiped. It can be hard to comprehend that sheer scale of that horror. For some, it may be easier to simply look away, to question whether it happened as it's written in the history books or whether it happened at all. Some say that it happened a long time ago and the world has changed. Remembering ensures that we do our part to prevent an atrocity like this from ever happening again. And it ensures that we are reminded of our individual and our collective duty to combat hatred and anti-Semitism wherever it rears its ugly head. Right now, there are forces of hate and evil that are trying to grip our society, trying to cultivate bigotry and hatred. Just this past year, Israel suffered the deadliest attack since the Holocaust. More than 1,200 people were killed in that attack, more than 200 taken hostage, and more than 130 are still being held prisoner by Hamas, a terrorist organization, including some of our fellow Americans. Since that attack, we've seen a nearly 150% increase in anti-Semitic incidents across our country. Sadly, that number is even higher here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Just 5 years ago, the deadliest act of anti-Semitic hate in U.S. history was committed right here in Pennsylvania, when a gunman murdered 11 people at the Tree of Life Shul in Pittsburgh in Representative Frankel's district. We see far too many people in the world today, even with that recent history, even with what is playing out every single minute of every single day right now in this nation and across the globe. We see far too many people in today's world who not only don't remember the atrocities of the past, they seem hell-bent on repeating them. They ignore or willingly deny the Holocaust and its preface, the restriction on the rights of Jews in Germany, the scapegoating, the boycotting, the societal separation. It's on all of us to remember the lessons of that entire chapter of world history, how it began and its devastating conclusion. Remembering, of course, requires action. It's on each of us to do our part, especially to make sure that those lessons are taught to future generations. It requires each of us, every day, elected leaders and every Pennsylvanian, to speak and act with moral clarity. It requires us to legislate, to prosecute, to invest. It requires us to each do our part to ensure that we never, ever forget and we do not repeat our history. Last year, at this solemn ceremony, I told you that I had just directed the Pennsylvania Department of Education to expand its work to provide Holocaust education materials to students and teachers so that every student in Pennsylvania is aware of our shared history and that everyone understands we have a responsibility to remember it and not repeat it. Over the past year, our Department of Education has updated its Holocaust, genocide, and human rights violations toolkit to ensure more stories of survivors and witnesses of the Holocaust so that our students can hear directly from the people who experienced it themselves. The department is currently working with the Anti-Defamation League to make an improved professional development training available to teachers across the Commonwealth to help them teach the full history of the Holocaust. That training will be available to all Pennsylvania teachers for the start of the next school year. And in just a few weeks, the Department of Education will be sending a survey to all school districts and charter schools in Pennsylvania to learn about how they approach Holocaust education, which is, as you heard, already part of our state standards. This will allow the Department of Education to provide individualized support to school districts that need further assistance to incorporate Holocaust education into their curriculum. This has been a priority for me and for Pennsylvania's First Lady. We believe that remembrance must be active, it must be engaging, and that it must be empowering. It is in the vacuum of knowledge that lies, conspiracy theories, and danger take root. That vacuum makes us each less safe, and it undermines the strength of our Commonwealth. The task of remembering, of never allowing ourselves to forget, requires us to stand up and to speak out, to be proud of who we are, to be proud of the collective, because we all share the responsibility to confront that bigotry head on. My faith teaches me that no one is required to complete the task, but neither are we free to refrain from it. That each of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game, and to do our part. It's on each of us to build a safer world for our children. It's on each of us to build a truly welcoming society in the spirit of William Penn, who adorns these walls, where everyone, no matter their faith, no matter their creed, can live, work, and worship with freedom and dignity without fear here in this Commonwealth. I'm honored to work with all of you in this fight, and I'm vow to continue to do my part to ensure that we teach the history of the Holocaust in Pennsylvania's classrooms, to strengthen Pennsylvania's hate crimes laws, to build a Commonwealth of Penn's vision, a place where all people, all religions, all faiths are welcome, to speak and act with moral clarity, and to never, ever forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor Shapiro, for your words and your actions in leading on these issues. We will now hear from Senator Kristin Phillips-Hill, Republican Majority Caucus Chair of the Pennsylvania Senate. Senator Phillips-Hill represents the 28th Senate District in York, Pennsylvania. Prior to her victory in 2018, Phillips-Hill served Southern York County as the House of Representatives for the 92nd Legislative District. She has a master's and a bachelor's degree from Rutgers University. Please welcome Senator Phillips-Hill.
Good morning. I am truly humbled to be here today for this Holocaust remembrance with our Holocaust survivors, the children and grandchildren of our Holocaust survivors, the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition, elected officials, our governor, and Pennsylvanians from all corners of our Commonwealth who are committed to ensuring that we never forget. I am so very proud to serve in the Senate of Pennsylvania, representing the 28th District in Southern York County that includes a small, vibrant Jewish community whose members have made significant contributions to the well-being and greater good of our entire community. Now, it's interesting to note that over 20 years ago, at Dallastown High School, the school that my children attended and graduated from, a teacher went to the administration and the school board to ask if she could create an elective course on the Holocaust. You see, students, they had so many questions, and the curriculum left her with very little time to delve into this complex and difficult subject. The administration and the board, they embraced the idea, and Mrs. Molly Dahlmeyer, she began teaching one elective class of Holocaust studies to our high school students. It was a great success in that the demand to take the class far exceeded the number of seats in the class. And each year, additional classes of Holocaust studies were added until it was the only class that Mrs. Dahlmeyer taught. When Mrs. Dahlmeyer was interviewed by the Dallastown Beacon, the student newspaper, as to her motivation to create and teach this course for over 20 years, she simply replied, "I believe that the students should learn so that the past won't repeat itself." The impact of this course on the students that took the class, and even the students that did not take the class, it was real and it was tangible. The culmination of the Holocaust Studies course was to view Schindler's List and to meet and hear from a Holocaust survivor who shared his life experience growing up in Poland during World War II, being taken by the Nazis at that tender age of 13, being transported to forced labor camps and eventually to Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. By the end of the war, only he, one of his sisters, and one of his brothers survived. Holocaust survivor Ruben Steyer gave our students a firsthand, eyewitness account of the great atrocities that he witnessed. But he also inspired them with a message of hope for the future. It was so powerful. And as a member of the Dallastown Area School Board, we believed that it was right and fitting to honor Mr. Steyer with an honorary degree from Dallastown to reflect the significant contributions that he had made to the education of our children. On graduation day 2014, he arrived on the football field with his wife, his children, and his grandchildren. It was also the year that our middle child graduated, and I was on the football field and I was exchanging pleasantries with his daughter. And she shared that he was so deeply honored and thrilled to receive this degree because the Nazis had robbed him of his high school education. He had never graduated. He had never received a degree, and we had no idea. Graduation commenced. Ruben was introduced, and as he stepped toward the podium to receive his honorary degree, the entire class of 2014 rose and gave him a standing ovation. And then the students' friends and their family and the community members followed suit, and they stood in the stands and they joined him. Reuben had not reached the podium. He had not even uttered a single word. And he received his degree and shared his words of gratitude, explaining to everyone that this was his first and only high school diploma. There was not a dry eye in that stadium. And he departed the podium to yet another standing ovation and the warm embrace of his family and his loved ones. It was less than 3 weeks later that the Pennsylvania General Assembly passed legislation that was signed into law as Act 70 of 2014 that created Holocaust education standards for students all across our Commonwealth. And that law was based on the course that was developed by Molly Dahlmeyer and the Dallastown Area School District. There is a concept in Judaism that I really love, and it's called tikkun ulam. And it is actions that are taken to repair or improve the world. From Reuben Steyer's commitment to educating our children, to Dallastown conferring him with an honorary degree, to Dallastown's course serving as our Commonwealth's model to ensure that we never forget. These acts have helped to repair and have worked to improve our world. Back home in York County, we saw yet another tikkun ulam in the community's response to the horrific attacks and atrocities of October 7th. As members of our community, they proudly flew Israeli flags, and people of all faiths, they joined together at our Jewish Community Center to pray for peace and healing. And it all started with the simple belief that our children must learn so that history does not repeat itself. May today's commemoration be yet another small act to repair our world and ensure that every Pennsylvanian, their children, their children's children, never forget. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Phillips-Hill. It was a most inspiring story. I'm Judith Cranis. I chair the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition Commemoration of the Holocaust Committee. And it is now my honor to introduce Senator Judy Schwank. Senator Schwank represents the 11th Senate District in Berks County. She's my state senator, and she is currently the Senate Democratic Caucus Administrator and Democratic Chair of the Senate Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee. She is the co-chair of the newly formed Pennsylvania Jewish Caucus. Senator Schwank holds a bachelor and a master's degree in agriculture education from Penn State University. She continued her studies at Harvard University, where she completed the Executive Leadership Program through the Institute for Conservation Leadership and the Institute for the Management of Lifelong Education. Welcome, Senator Schwank.
Thank you, Judith. It's an honor to be introduced by you. I really appreciate that. Good morning, everyone. Yes, I'm Judy Schwank, representing the 11th District, which includes the city of Reading and much of Berks County, and a small and also vibrant Jewish community. I'm honored to speak today and join you for this annual civic commemoration of Yom HaShoah, a day of remembrance for the 6 million victims of the Holocaust. It's very heartening to me, should be to all of us, that the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, home to over 350,000 people of the Jewish faith and many Holocaust survivors, that we come together each year to ensure the horrors of the Holocaust are never whitewashed, diminished, or forgotten. And thankfully, We have strong bipartisan support for this crucial cause, and every level of government is represented in this effort today. Yes, this year feels very different. The events of October 7th weigh heavily on our hearts as we think of the over 100 hostages still held by Hamas and witness the ongoing conflict in Gaza with great dread. Our thoughts especially go out to our Holocaust survivors who have undoubtedly witnessed and experienced the horrors of October 7th with profound anguish. In fact, Shlomo Mansour, the oldest hostage held by Hamas, is himself a Holocaust survivor. Several years ago, I believe it may have been here in this commemoration, we heard a Holocaust survivor speak of his experiences during his time in a concentration camp. He wept as he recalled the death of a beloved niece, just a toddler, who died in the gas chamber at the camp. And in a broken voice, very emotionally, he asked, "Was her life for nothing?" Over 1.5 million children were murdered during the Shoah, lives cut short by unimaginable cruelty. As we remember the horror of the Holocaust, it's imperative that we do not forget that each individual who perished had a name and a life and potential. Decades after the Holocaust, Jews throughout the world continue to face so many challenges. As a deadly war rages in the Middle East, we've also seen a sharp 150% increase in anti-Semitic incidents here in the United States just in the past year. Amidst these challenges, it's vital that we stand united today for Holocaust Remembrance Day. Yom HaShoah is a time to reflect on one of the darkest periods in world history and to recommit ourselves to combating anti-Semitism and all forms of faith-based hatred wherever they appear. It serves as a reminder of the importance of preserving the memory of those who suffered and perished, ensuring that their stories are not forgotten and passed on to generations to come. We have a responsibility, that's what this is about, to teach our children and their children the lessons of the Holocaust and the destruction that can be engendered by hatred. Never again and never forget must be more than slogans and hashtags and a pin that we wear on our lapel, but a call to action to end anti-Semitism and hatred. So I want to thank the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition and Governor Shapiro for hosting this event, but most importantly, I want to thank everyone that's here today for being here, for helping us send a clear message to all that hatred is not welcome in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. We pray for peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator Schwank. I would now like to introduce Representative Matthew Bradford. Representative Bradford currently serves the 70th Legislative District, which includes Montgomery County, and is currently the Democratic Majority Leader of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. He has a bachelor's degree and Juris Doctorate from Villanova University. He resides in Montgomery County with his wife and 4 children. Welcome, Leader Bradford.
Thank you. And I want to thank the 2 senators for their inspiring and touching words. I also want to thank my colleague, Representative Frankel, who I've also had the honor of serving with, and he is in many ways the conscience of our caucus on these issues. He has served with tremendous grace in difficult times for his community, and he has done so in a way that inspires our caucus for the difficult work that we have to do. I also want to thank the governor. He had us in this room several months ago, and he spoke about the need for tolerance and our great Commonwealth's, Pennswood's history, founded in no small part on the idea that we would be tolerant of each other's religion. In retrospect, that seemed like a simpler time. It seemed like a black versus white issue. And we understand that complex times we are in. But complex times is no excuse for intolerance or ignorance. It is not a time to forget. It is time to run towards evil and confront it with our words and our actions, and with the memory of those who did just that in horrible times that have preceded us. We have an obligation today, and frankly every day in this Commonwealth, to do right, to confront those who would engage in the false equivalencies, who would engage in the language, who would engage in the actions that should be intolerable and unacceptable to every one of us. In the House, we are proud to have passed hate crimes legislation. We look forward to having that discussion. It seems more relevant now than ever. I also rightfully remember Governor Shapiro saying to us, in that memory where we, in a bipartisan way, stood rightfully with the state of Israel, that we had work to do. And that work is in front of us and more relevant now than ever before. We all have this obligation. I want to thank those who've reminded us again for our obligation to do right for the next generation of Pennsylvanians, for our children and our grandchildren, so they will not forget as well. I want to thank the Jewish Coalition as well as the governor for continuing to make sure that this event is at the forefront of Holocaust remembrance and Holocaust education here in the Commonwealth. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader Bradford. It is now my honor to introduce Representative Mark Gillen. Mark Gillen, Representative, has represented the 128th Legislative District, again in my county of Berks, since 2011. He is the Republican Chair of the House Veterans Affairs and Emergency Preparedness Committee. He holds bachelor's degrees from Bob Jones University and the University of South Carolina. He received his master's from Kutztown University. Representative Gillen is the founder of the Berks Military History Museum, again in Berks County, and if you haven't been there, I highly suggest you come. And he is the founder of a future Berks Holocaust Museum and Education Center. While the Military History Museum concentrates on remembering those who have served, the Holocaust Museum will focus on educating all generations about the atrocities of the Holocaust, encouraging visitors to reflect on the suffering inflicted by an extreme anti-Semitic ideology, and never forgetting the victims of this tragedy. Welcome, Representative Gillen.
Thank you very much, Judith. Almost 80 years ago, during the Second World War, Master Sergeant Roddy Edmonds was captured by the Germans during the Battle of the Bulge. He was the leading officer in his group that was taken into custody, and they were interred at a stalag, a German stalag, after a long forced march, and loaded onto a train, and they found themselves in a really difficult situation. While there, the Germans announced over the public address system that they wanted the Jewish members under his command to step out in front of the barracks the next morning. Roddy Edmonds ordered the entire contingent under him, over 1,000 men, to go out in front of the barracks that morning. A German officer approached Master Sergeant Edmonds and said, "They can't all be Jews." And he said, as a Christian, "We are all Jews." The German officer pulled out his Luger pistol and then ordered him to again dismiss the men that were not Jews. And he repeated, "We are all Jews." and they didn't move. And the Jews were not segregated. Today, we are all Jews. I've been on a journey, and I'll be very brief. Many more articulate than I have already spoken. We've been on a journey, our family and our community in Berks County, to start a Holocaust museum. It started with a gallery. It was a timeline of the rise of Hitler in power from 1933, the Holocaust, the liberators, the Nuremberg trials, the birth of the nation of Israel in 1948. And I got a phone call as we were planning a ceremonial groundbreaking, and we were dedicating the Holocaust gallery that we had put in, which was ironically birthed of COVID a few years back. The museum had to close, and so we gutted a kitchen area and installed that Holocaust gallery. I got a call that I had never quite expected I would receive, and it was from the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Most of us that are involved in elected positions don't like to get calls from the FBI. And I wasn't quite sure what it was all about, but I went ahead and answered the call. And he indicated that there was quite a bit of chatter online and perceived opposition to what we were doing. We held our ceremonial groundbreaking event. The FBI had communicated with the Reading Bomb Squad, and they were up the street. I announced that to the assembled group, not to stir fright in the group, but rather to establish our resolve that we were doing the right thing, and we would not be deterred, and we would continue in this effort. I wrote an op-ed for our local newspaper, and I know it'll be difficult for many of you to see this. It was an opinion relative to standing with Israel in the wake of the brutal attack of last October. I then received this in the mail, which further confirmed the Holocaust is a lie. Standing with Israel in the wake of the brutal attack was the title of my article. And then it said, nuke Israel, free Gaza, with swastikas on it. Later, we did another event, and once again, we had a negative reaction from some members of the community, including this quote: "How many years are you going to be a lapdog for the synagogue of Satan? Start telling the truth, sell out." And further, we heard, "Your Holocaust is a big lie, Sieg Heil Hitler." The winds of anti-Semitism are blowing strong. And it's distasteful that I would even have to read this, but it is necessary that not only we communicate that this is what's going on behind the scenes, that we do everything that we can to counteract it. I like what the governor had to say when he spoke about being active and engaging. If ever there was a day, and if ever there was a moment that we had to be involved in Holocaust education, and if ever there was a period of time that we had to stand up, it is now. This is not a moment for silence. I further made a decision that I was going to take a trip to Israel to be involved directly supporting. That's going to happen immediately after the budget is consummated, so we know that we're going to end on time this year. I'm just making a general public announcement. Unfortunately, Leader Bradford's gone. He knew I was going to say this. But let me unwind with this. Because of what I'm doing over there, there was a number of different hoops that I had to jump through. One of them required an exhaustive physical. I don't recall looking at an eye chart since I was 12 years old, and they decided I was going to start at the top with a big E. I can see that, all right? I'm not that old. And while the physical was being consummated, the doctor who was filling out the form kind of looked at it a little bit more carefully than somebody might otherwise and said, "Why are you going over there?" And I was a little bit evasive, wasn't sure where the physician was coming from. And we kind of bypassed that. And she came back to it again. She goes, normally you don't need to fill out a form like this to go visit Israel. And again, I was not real direct. And finally, she had a mask on. She pulled off her mask and looked at me and she goes, "Who are you?" And I said, "My name is Mark Gill." And she goes, "I knew it." She goes, "We came to the Holocaust Gallery right there in Berks County. And I brought my grandchild." I said, "Oh, that's wonderful." And she sat down next to me. She said, "I have a very brief story to tell you. I know you're busy and you've waited a long time for this physical." She said, "My mother was interred at Buchenwald. She was 7 years old." And I said, "Is your mother still alive?" "Her mother is alive, and she's in Munich, Germany, and she's going to be visiting her soon." This is a divine intersection that we have right now. This is a time to engage. This is not a time to step back. This is a time to step in. I communicated to my friends in Israel the details of that conversation and the engagement that I've had leading up to the moment of their accepting me over there to help with this particular program. And she said, "The president of the synagogue has asked you to speak while you're over in Israel. So rather unique, a Christian is going to have the opportunity to speak in a synagogue in Israel. I'm very, very pleased to do that. But let me leave you with a challenge. Where you sit, where you live, where you work, what will you be doing to combat this anti-Semitism?" Thank you and God bless.
Thank you, Representative Gillen. Before we commence our solemn commemoration, I would like us to share a moment of silence for survivors who previously took part in this program and have passed away. And those survivors who we enjoyed meeting and learning from include Sonia Glick, Frida Lederer, Sam Rosen, Sandy Sternberg, Sam Sharon, and Bluma Shapiro. And may we also remember Michael Sand, former chair of the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition and chair of this program for many, many years. Michael passed away last year. His dedication and drive to assure that the Holocaust is always remembered was second to none. Let us think to all of their memory. Thank you. Many survivors of the Holocaust dedicated their lives to helping others and to telling their stories so the Holocaust never happens again. As time moves on, it is their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren who will be sharing their stories. This will help to educate future generations about the horrors endured during this dark time in history. These generations are a testament to the courage and the hope that kept the survivors alive. So let me introduce some of these new storytellers who will each light one of our 6 candles in memory of their loved ones and of the millions of others who perished in the Holocaust. As I say your name, please come and light a candle, and when you've lit the candle, please return to your chair and stay standing. So first we will call up Jack Kay in memory of Emma Kay of Philadelphia. Thank you, Jack. Lillian Rappaport and her daughter Jenna Rappaport in memory of Jacob and Jania Weinstock of Harrisburg. Thank you, ladies. Jesse Rosen Harvey and Lisa Rosen Krupp in memory of Sam and Olga Sunyag Rosen of Scranton. Thank you. The Honorable Mike Schlossberg in memory of Harry and Helen Hertzberg of Brooklyn, New York. Thank you. Rachel Smithers and her son Ben Smithers in memory of her grandparents Irene and Martin Schwartz of Wheaton, Maryland. Thank you, and please come up. I've somehow missed where your name was on my list. Shapiro, thank you. Barry. Thank you, Barry. You may all be seated, and thank you. We honor your memories and the work you do today to make our world a safer place, and we will always remember.
Thank you, Judith. Before I introduce the next speaker, I would like to recognize the staff and board members of the Pennsylvania Jewish Coalition, including our executive director, Hank Butler, who have worked tirelessly to put this program together. I would also like to recognize the public officials who have also joined us today for this ceremony, and there are many. Speaker Joanna McClinton, Representative Joanny Siplita Fryetz, Representative Ben Sanchez, Chair Seth Gore, Representative Melissa Schusterman, Secretary Ori Munson, Representative Tim Briggs, Representative Craig Williams, Representative Mary Isaacson, Representative Steve Malagari, Representative Paul Takak, Representative Mike Stender, Senator Amanda Capoletti, Representative Jill Cooper, Representative Stephanie Cialaba, Representative Justin Fleming, Representative Tariq Khan, Representative Joe Hogan, Senator Carolyn Comita, Representative Kathy Rapp, Representative Tim Brennan, Representative Valerie Gatos, Representative Tim Twardzik, Representative Robert Freeman, Representative Brett Miller, Representative Marla Brown, Chair Jordan Harris, Attorney General Michelle Henry, Treasurer Stacey Garrity. It's a real testament to our government that so many leaders are here. I would now like to introduce Chloe Busara, a student at Crossroads Middle School in Lewisberry. Chloe will be reading her winning essay from this year's Schwab Holocaust Essay Contest. Come on up, Chloe.
It's quite confusing to me that someone could deny the Holocaust happened if they would only visit it and see what I saw. When I visited the Holocaust Museum in March, I saw many exhibits there that proved that the genocide took place. I saw shoes from the millions of victims, pictures of the ghettos, photographs of the deportation of Jews, and oral testimonies from Auschwitz survivors. There are many first-hand accounts of the atrocities that happened in the concentration camps. In addition, there's photographic evidence that this horrible dehumanization of European Jews, Romani, disabled people, and many other millions of innocent people suffered under the Nazis. However, as someone who is Jewish and is living in the United States, I can easily understand why people deny the Holocaust, and it's because they have never been educated properly about it. If they would have visited the museum or received any information about the Holocaust, there would have been no way that my peers in school would joke about over 6 million innocent Jews being killed, or that someone could call me a Nazi, or constantly being told to go back to the gas chamber. If my peers have learned about the Holocaust, they wouldn't have yelled during lunch, "Gas the Jews," while laughing. I would not have been told by a classmate that their Halloween costume was going to be that they would dress up as a Nazi and then tie a leash around my neck to lead me to the gas chamber. I would not hear Jew being called out in the school hallways while I'm changing classes. No one who has learned anything about the Holocaust could do actions like this. The Nazi persecution of the Jews began with hateful comments and words, which escalated to discrimination and dehumanization. Between 1933 and 1945, Nazi Germany and its allies established more than 44,000 camps and ghettos. In March 1933, the first concentration camp, Dachau, opened outside of Munich, Germany. It was mostly used for political prisoners and was the largest running camp in operation until its liberation of April 1945. Auschwitz consisted of 3 camps, including a killing center. These camps were open through 1940 and 1942. There are survivors to tell their stories about these deadly camps. We would not know this information if the Holocaust had never happened. The Nazis targeted Jews because of the Germans falsely accused Jews of being the cause of Germany's social, political, and cultural problems. The most well-known reason was the Germans blaming Jews for Germany's loss in World War I. Anger over the loss of the war and the economic and political crises that happened contributed to the increasing anti-Semitism in German society. The instability of Germany under the Weimar Republic, the fear of communism, and the economic shock of the Great Depression made many Germans open to Nazi ideas. The Nazis believed that the world was divided into distinct races and that some of these races were more superior than others. They considered Germans to be part of the supposedly superior Aryan race. According to the Nazis, Jews were a threat that needed to be removed from German society. Otherwise, the Nazis believed that the Jewish race would permanently corrupt and destroy the German people and their economy. Another argument used to diminish the horrors of the Holocaust is that the Nazis did not have any intentions to kill the Jews. During the implementation of the mass murder of European Jews, SS officials at killing centers forced the victims of the Holocaust to maintain the deception necessary to deport the Jews from Germany. Concentration camp and killing center officials forced prisoners, many of whom would soon die in gas chambers, were ordered to send postcards home stating that they were being treated well and living in good conditions. These are examples of the Nazis effectively using propaganda to eventually win the support of millions of Germans. Deniers engage in their activities to reduce public sympathy for Jews, to undermine the lawfulness of the State of Israel, and to make people doubt Jews in the Holocaust. One cannot fabricate the aftermath of the Holocaust, which is so well documented. When the remaining Jews were liberated, there was nowhere else for them to go. Their homes were sold, their family members had perished, and they had experienced unspeakable trauma. Many survivors were placed in displaced person camps until they could immigrate to a new home. The simple truth is that the Holocaust did happen. We would not have had the Nuremberg trials if the Holocaust had never happened. I would not have been able to visit the Holocaust Museum in Israel last summer if it did not happen. I would not have been able to learn my Holocaust education from a granddaughter of Holocaust survivors if it did not happen. The Holocaust happened.
Thank you, Chloe, for your thoughtful essay, for writing it, for being here to share it, and for continuing to share your experiences with others. As we come toward the end of our program, I wish to thank all of our speakers, the press in the room, and everyone in the audience for supporting this important program. Now we will conclude the program with a violin performance of the song Sag nit kein Mol, or Never Say. The lyrics, which are reproduced in your programs, were written in 1943 by Hirsch Glick, a young Jewish inmate at the Vilna ghetto, and this Yiddish song is considered one of the chief anthems of Holocaust survivors. Today, the violin will be played by Ben Smithers, a student in the Susquehanna Township School District and the great-grandson of survivors of the Holocaust. Thank you, Ben. Thank everyone for coming, and please continue to remember to help teach and share the principles we have learned. Never forget and never again.